Breaking Consciousness Transforming podcast for exceptional 21st century living. Folks, we have a wonderful show today. We're going to be speaking with Salicrow, and her book that we're talking about today is The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, a Wyrd woman's book of shadows. And folks, this is an encyclopedia for anyone that is studying witchcraft, whether you've been in it for 40 years or you're just putting your toe in the water today. It's going to give you grounded, positive information, replete with stories and techniques. And she shares her book of shadows, and it is excellent. So if this is a subject of interest to you, this would definitely be a book to purchase now and keep on your bookshelf forever, because it's going to be on mine forever. And you guys know I just don't say that very often. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through the blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that is holding you back, but you know I always ask that question, are you truly ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief system. A bit about me for my new listeners, intuitive since birth. I'm a third generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I am the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind, body, spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. My clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information to assist them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website. That's MoniqueChapman.com. And I invite you to like me on Facebook and follow me on LinkedIn. Folks, I'm going to be participating in the Wisdom of Reiki conference at the Omega Center in Rhinebeck, New York, September 23rd through the 25th. If you're in the area and you're a Reiki practitioner, please join us. William Lee Rand, Brett Bevel, Michelle Denis, myself, many others are going to be there, and we would love to have you with us. My guest today, Salicrow, is a witch, druid, and natural psychic medium who weaves the traditions of her Irish traveler and Blackfoot heritage with modern magical techniques. With more than 30 years of professional experience in the psychic arts as a spirit channel and seer, she offers readings for individual groups and teaches workshops throughout the United States and internationally. She lives in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, and you can check her out at her website, and that is salicrow.com, and that is SALICROW.com. Welcome, Salicrow.
Thank you for having me, Monique.
Hey, it's great to have you. I am so intrigued when the book came across my desk. I was like, oh, this feels so good. I mean, you can feel your energy right through the book. And folks, when you check out her website and you go to the book section in her website, you will see that this lady writes her talk. She writes her truth. You've written what, total of 3 books?
I have
This is
3 books right now.
So tell us a little bit about Jump Girl.
Jump Girl is a memoir. It's Jump Girl, the initiation and art of a spirit speaker. And it was my story of growing up in a psychic family and then how it progressed. I've been working with the public since I was 18. I'm 51 now. And so this has been pretty much my whole life. And there's still a lot more, but the book was up until I had this major awakening that took me from just, doing psychic readings, looking into people's lives, to really stepping forward as a psychic medium and spirit communication.
Okay. And then is the elemental Witchcraft, your second?
Yes. The Path of
Okay.
Elemental Witchcraft is my second book. And my
Mm-hmm.
third book, which is called Spirit Speaker, A Medium's Guide to Death and Dying, comes out in April of next year.
Okay. Well, I'd love to have you back if you'd like to be back on because again, your work is extremely grounded. Now, you grew up in a psychic family, as did I, but I didn't know it was a psychic family. We just like practiced religion and did, our thing, so to speak. Did you have a similar experience, or was it really separated as you're a psychic? This is what we do.
Well, my great grandmother was my first teacher, and people used to come to visit her for healing, for readings, and for her to talk to them their dead. But she did not use the language that we modernly use, like psychic. She would say,
Mm-hmm.
"You know things, Sally," or "Dead people talk to you, Sally. It's okay." She didn't use the language was different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, Sort of like my background, but it's interesting when you get out in the world and I went to kindergarten and saw colors around people and I'm telling them, "Oh, you're green and blue
Yeah,
and whatever." And they're like, "Huh?" So
right,
it's really
exactly.
interesting growing up. But you grew up, you got through all of that, and this
I
book, I mean,
had the
this
benefit of both my grandmother and one of my sisters is also psychic, so I just
mhm.
assumed that that was just normal for us.
Yeah, it's like your family, and I thought everybody else could do the same thing. I didn't realize that,
Hmm.
other people didn't know things, and it was quite a shock to me,
Right.
to be honest, that
Yes.
people were doing it. Now, you utilize the four elements, water, air, fire, and earth. Do you correlate them at all to the four seasons?
I do sometimes. The book, The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, is actually more based in working with elemental beings.
Mm-hmm.
And, than it is so much with the seasons. But I definitely see a connection between the elements and seasons, the elements in the tarot, the elements and the directions, all of those things.
Yeah, that's what I was picking up strongly as I was reading your book that, things were, well, everything is always connected, right? I mean, it's just that
Hmm.
humans try to separate things out into different little compartments. Um, Tell us why this book and why this book now.
Oh, so the book actually came about because I had a profound experience with the spirit of water while visiting the spring at Panther Meadows on Mount Shasta in Northern
Mm-hmm.
California. And the spirit of water communicated with me, which I speak about very clearly in the book, and kind of set me on this journey. It first started where my healing work was changed. I've been a Reiki master since I was 28 in multiple
Mm-hmm.
schools of Reiki and sound healing. And when I came back from that trip, I started um, speaking to the water inside of people's body and asking it
Oh,
to work with me.
mm-hmm.
Like if I was trying to help somebody, like, let's go back to our natural state, let's go back to what we're supposed to be at. And that's how it started. And then all of a sudden, I got, this water attunement, and I felt that it worked for me, but I'm a very experiential person. So I was teaching a elemental workshop in on Lake Superior, and that was the first time I gave the attunement to other people who also had a profound experience with it. And so it just kind of evolved. I first thought that I was going to write a book on water. That's what I first presented to my publisher. And
Mm-hmm.
when I did, I just put in my, pitch that I thought that it should be, there should be four books because there's four elements. And they decided that they would rather have them all in one book. So it went from being a book on water magic to a book on elemental magic. I mean, I was
Mm-hmm.
prepared to write all four eventually, but I actually wrote The Path of Elemental Witchcraft in 6 months. So when you say it's a
Oh,
tome, now say I wrote this in 6 months.
wow. You must have been writing from morning to night every single
it,
day. That's
I, it
quite an
was definitely a
accomplishment.
deep it was definitely a deep immersion. I did most of the writing the writing happened in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And So I was already like isolating, and I
Yeah.
have a pretty magical piece of land and I have apprentices. So I was teaching workshops because people could do that outside. And all of this was happening at the same time. So as I was writing the book, I was also working the magic of the book with people who were coming to retreats at my property. So
Hmm.
it was definitely an immersive experience.
Well, going within, to me, that's part of what the pandemic was all about, trying to teach us to go within and,
Yeah,
get out of mass mind consciousness. And those that paid attention, there's definitely been a positive shift within their lives. Um,
absolutely.
you talk about you believe that magic is science that has yet to be explained. Talk to us more about
Mhm.
that, because I believe that especially the medical community is finally coming around. So talk to us about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was my experience because, like I said, I've also been a Reiki practitioner for a long time and practiced vocal toning as a healing form. And I have most of my clients that I do readings and spirit communication for and healing, they're everyday people. They're not necessarily people who are, studying witchcraft. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
always looking for ways to communicate with them about the metaphysical world in terms that they can understand. And you're right about healing being the most noticeable because, there's hundreds of hospitals now in the United States in which Reiki is offered as compatible care.
Mm-hmm.
And, that language, what I'm seeing is science, whether through, the medical field or the quantum field, is now talking about things that magical practitioners have believed forever. Even if we go back to, like the quantum theories of what we think we create, that what we're influencing our reality, we are co-creating our reality. Science is starting to
Mm-hmm.
be able to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Water is a great example. Like the experiments that have been done with water have really been able to show us our influence over that. And then you go, okay, and then how much of us is water and how much of us, I could get down a rabbit hole with that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to go a little further, you can.
Okay, so one of the things that I feel happens with is that science needs to have um, they have to be able to prove it. And magic has been accomplishing things for a long time that magic, I mean, the science is only now being able to prove. There
Mm-hmm.
are lots of people call them like pseudoscientists, but that's what science is called whenever it hasn't made mainstream yet. So
Mm-hmm.
I do like the work of people like Bruce Lipton and
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Joe Dispenza and Eileen McCusick, who works with biofield tuning.
Mm-hmm.
They are all, their science is the mapping of things. We're just finally getting to this point where things are being mapped. And the language is the barrier that holds a lot of people back from being able to accept magic. So I'm very thrilled with science doing the work that is bringing the language forward.
Mm. Why is it that mainstream TV, they project magic in a completely different arena? And what comes to mind is, and I've never seen the movie, so if I misspeak, you can correct me. But what comes to mind is the Harry Potter movies. They're like, you can
Okay.
wave a magic wand and you can say these words without knowing what the words mean, and you're going to manifest. And yeah, you might manifest
Right,
something, but it might not be what
right.
you want. So why do you think that has taken such a hold on
So
us?
the Harry Potter image is really, I call it the Disney personification or the Hollywood personification of magic, which means that magic is a subtle art. And
Mm-hmm.
most people have to train their senses to be able to perceive that. You were raised in a more psychically aware family. You see things that other people have to train themselves to see.
Mm-hmm.
So Hollywood and Disney and Harry Potter, they all want to show the people who can't see what magic looks like, and they distort it. But some of the things that are actually in Harry Potter are, somewhat based in fact. People do usually have a little bit of a reawakening, if you will, at about 11 or 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Children, when they're young and they have a lot of psychic senses, that is something they experience usually until they're about 5 or 6 years old. at 6 years old, when our conscious, analytical mind comes on board, we start paying attention to what everybody else thinks is normal. And we're also in the school system with those senses that we have also start to reemerge. And unfortunately, a lot of times, the really sensitive kids are also the ones who are being diagnosed with things like attention deficit and, giving them a medication and saying, this might be the problem.
Yeah.
I have a
Let
lot to say.
that
I was on a school board for a long time. So,
so
um,
you know.
mhm.
And
So
they
I
want to
think
shut
that
it down.
Harry Potter, even in with the wand, here's an interesting thing. So some of the stuff is correct, but it's distorted. I once did an experiment. I used to do these aura manipulation experiments with people where a person would be blindfolded in the middle of a circle and then everybody be moving around them. Somebody has a dowsing rod, and when the speaker says stop, the person with the dowsing rod would move in and stop at the blindfolded person's aura at
Mm-hmm.
the edge of it. And then the
Mm-hmm.
person in the middle would have to determine where somebody was in their aura and who they were.
Mm.
And we did this for a while. And one time we moved to someone else's house, and everybody who was in the middle would stop and face this apple tree and say, Sally. And I was like, what the hell? Like they keep thinking this apple tree is me. So we took our experiment in a different direction, and I stood in an apple orchard,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody would walk a blindfolded person by me and see if they could find me, and no one could detect me. Then I
Wow.
went and I stood in a line of cedar trees, and I stood out like a sore thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started doing it with everybody. We started trying to figure out what their energy felt like. So that made me think of, the wands in Harry Potter have to be of a particular wood that is the same vibration or similar
Mm-hmm.
vibration as the caster. And
Mm-hmm.
that is true because a wand is an extension of the magic user. They're
Okay.
meant to be like the
Mm-hmm.
lengthening of your arm or the
Mm-hmm.
strengthening of your power. So I have some mixed feelings about Harry Potter. It definitely glamorizes everything, and most people like do not face the kind of evil that they're going to face in the Harry Potter movie. Um,
Yes.
you know, so there is the glamorization, but there are actually a lot of things that are fairly factual if you take it back down to the base level of what
Mm-hmm.
they used.
Yeah, a lot of movies. I haven't seen Harry Potter, but a lot of movies are like that. If you just distill all the crap out, you can get down to
Right.
the
I read the
grounded
Harry
truth.
Potter. My kids were growing up during Harry
Uh-huh.
Potter's highlight, so I read them first, and then they watched the movies. And that was, for me, as somebody who was already practicing magic at that point, there were things that I could point out and be like, "Oh, this part's actually accurate," and
Mm-hmm.
or this part is true, but they've made it more sensationalized.
Yeah. Yeah. And plus, I think it's a danger to put a lot of information out there if someone on the other end decides to practice it just as they see it and
Right.
get themselves into a world of trouble. Now, Sally, you are
Right.
a witch, but you're also a professional psychic medium. Tell us about that and
Yeah.
explain to the couple of people out there who don't know the difference between a psychic and a psychic medium, because there's at least one person listening who doesn't have a clue.
Right. So to be psychic, the word psychic encompasses all psychic abilities. Somebody who does energetic healing is technically psychic.
Hmm.
Somebody who, does geomancy and is working with earth energy is technically psychic. But most of the time when we're talking about the word psychic, we're talking about the ability to look into the unseen world. So whether that is things hidden in your own life, or experiences that have yet to come, or secrets buried in the past, that's what the word psychic means. I worked professionally as a psychic for about 12 years before I started practicing spirit communication for the public. I first did psychic readings, looking into people's past, present, and future. I still do that. I also do past life readings and soul purpose readings and all sorts of things. Um, but as a spirit medium or channel, I am very accurate. and I also go very deep. So a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
mediums will send people to me because I sometimes am doing counseling for people between their dead. Like if there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
unresolved things, I am the person who's buffering that.
Mm-hmm.
And um, my mediumship ability has made it so that I am pretty well accepted, even though I'm a witch, in whatever environment I walk into. A lot of my clients are, police officers, nurses, doctors,
Mm-hmm.
waitresses, old ladies.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Is, isn't it amazing how the professional community will come to people like us, but they don't want anybody else to know, but they will
right,
take our advice. I work with
right.
someone high in the advertising arena, and you'd
Yeah,
be amazed. I mean, it's like, but they
right.
don't tell anybody.
Right. Well, actually, people like even in politics, like
Hmm.
presidents and presidents' wives have been known to see psychics. They don't
Hmm.
advertise it, but it's definitely out there. And our country, as well as other countries, have lots of magical workings, particularly through the form of Masonic magic and
Mm.
geomancy.
Hmm. Yes, and people are not necessarily aware of that. So when
Hmm.
you go to your website, and that's salicrow.com, salicrow.com, and you look at your readings, you have the crow, you have the raven, and you have the rook. Tell us the symbolism of the crow, the raven, and the rook.
So, Crow is a spiritual name for me.
Mm-hmm.
And my family actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at crows talk all the time and they're listening who really want me to look at something or they're just checking in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that, crows are pretty casual. Ravens are not very casual. When ravens show up in your life, most people go, holy shit, that's a raven.
Mm-hmm.
So, you need a little bit more time. That's a 40-minute reading, but I did it because of the idea that, okay, needs more time. And rooks, actually, I experienced the first time I went to England. They have a lot of rooks there. They live in like apartment complexes. Like there are lots of them. There is so
Mm.
much going on with rooks, like where crows and ravens are a little bit more family unit. The rook, literally, there could be 30 of them living in a spot easily.
Oh, wow.
Um, so for me, the rook being is an hour unit. We've got
Mm-hmm.
a lot going on, like that rook that's like busy in its world.
Mm-hmm.
I also offer a reading that's called the White Raven reading, and that is a reading that I developed in during the beginning of the pandemic. And it was when people really needed to be able to see the light. So that reading is based on recognizing the gifts that we carry. So it
Mm.
is, for people who want to delve into psychic work but are afraid of seeing anything bad, the White Raven's a great place to start because it shows you what gifts you have and how they manifest and how to work with them,
Mm-hmm.
including where your strongest psychic abilities lie. Um, so yeah, I
Okay.
love the Raven, Rook, Crow family.
Okay. So what if you looked outside your window and all of a sudden you saw, no lie, 30 ravens on your lawn? What does that mean?
I would
Run
be
away
thinking that
quickly?
something big. No, I would be thinking that something big. If it was in my yard, I would be something
Uh-huh.
big was going to land in my yard. Like this is going to happen, and I don't have to go find it. It's going to come to me.
Hmm.
And what I would tell people if they had that experience would be instead of just seeing it as bad, is to actually try to calm themselves, center themselves, and then ask, what do I actually feel when I see these? For me, if I saw 30 ravens, I'd probably get really excited and
Hmm.
I would think that whatever was going to happen was going to be good.
Okay. Well,
But
that literally happens to me almost on a daily basis. I don't know where they live when they're not on my lawn, but they're
to
here
you,
all the time. And we have ravens and crows, and to me, crows will hop and ravens will walk. Does that make sense to you?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
And,
there's
and we
definitely
have.
a lot of differences.
Mhm. but there's all the time. And I started, to be honest, I'm afraid of birds. Like you get a little, I
Okay.
don't know, hummingbird. I'm like freaking out, right? And then these big, these big ravens come, and I mean they're big. They're not, like little junior ones. They're well fed wherever they're eating.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God,
So
it's
ravens
just
are connected to the spirit world. They're connected
yeah.
to the unseen world. They're also connected to a couple of different deities, both that I work with. Like I work with the Morrigan, from
Mm-hmm.
Irish mythology, and Odin. Um, and Odin has two ravens who are Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, and they are said to go out every day and gather information and return to Odin with that. So they're very much signs of prophetic
Mm-hmm.
knowledge or communication between worlds as well. So there you go.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. When we bought this house on the corner, because we live on a corner, someone years and years ago had made an eye, and then they put a plant in the middle of the eye. And I'm like, what a perfect
Ah,
house for me. It was like, great, great, great.
right,
Yeah,
right.
it just kind of tuned in. And what is it when you see a bald eagle?
Well, bald eagles are, first of all, they're a sign of our country. So it depends on
Hmm.
how you receive them.
It
But
flew
the
over me when I
eagles,
was walking the dog.
yeah, eagles are about clear sight and
Hmm.
higher vision. They're usually talking to us about our ability to perceive the bigger picture, because they usually are at such heights. But yeah, having an eagle fly over you, again, I would consider that a blessing. My sister and I were coming out of the Willoughby Forest, which is a really amazing lake near where I live.
Hmm.
And she had an eagle fly about 10 feet over her head. And we were like, oh,
Oh, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
big
I mean,
stuff is coming in.
yeah, they're
Um,
huge. They're beautiful, but
mhm,
in my era, you don't expect to see one. And I was like, wow, just blown away. But I do have to ask you about this story. Early in the beginning of your book, you talk about mirrors and how to utilize
mhm,
mirrors to watch people and gain information. And you share a wonderful story about Mrs. Bobbin or Boblin in the story
Bobbin.
and your
Mhm,
Bobbin and your grandmother. So could you share that and the reasoning behind it? Because I mean,
sure.
it's funny and it's deeply insightful at the same time.
Yes, my grandmother was an excellent teacher, and she very seldom taught in what other people would think was teaching. And when she got older, she moved in with my grandmother was actually my great grandmother. She moved back in with her son, my grandfather, and she didn't really like that, but she lived next door to this lady who, oh my gosh, she was so bitchy. This lady was old, and she like had her hair perfectly curled, and she always dyed it bright black, except for she always had like the line of white roots and had her red
Hmm.
lipstick on. She was always really done. And
Hmm.
like she would never, everybody else would cross over the lawn in between the driveways, but she always have to walk out of her driveway, over on the sidewalk, back into my grandmother's driveway. And she complained all the time about us,
Hmm.
that she didn't know why my grandmother had us so often. So there was another reason to dislike her. And she did weird things. So like she used to make my grandmother's tea with her used tea bag. She'd come to my grandmother's house, she'd make herself tea with a tea bag, and then she'd make my grandmother's. And I think it's a Depression era thing, but I didn't understand it. I just
Hmm.
thought it was really disrespectful. And one
Hmm.
day my grandmother, because she usually had her kitchen table up against one wall, and then
Hmm.
told me that I would be sitting for tea, and that meant I couldn't talk or anything, but that I could sit there, which is kind of like a
Hmm.
big kid move. And and that I was supposed to sit on the side closest to the wall. And I did that before Mrs. Bobbin got there, so there could be no misunderstanding to Mrs. Bobbin that I was staying.
Hmm.
And as they started talking, I've always been able to scry through mirrors and any reflective surface since I was a little kid. And in this case, it was the teacups. And sat down. And as she was talking, I was kind of like watching her through the tea or listening to her and staring at the tea. And the thing that I came away from was the realization that Mrs. Bobbin never had company, that her kids never came to visit her, that
Mm.
she was a really lonely old woman, and that the reason it bothered her so much that my grandmother always had us was because she never saw her children, she never saw her grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it was a really important lesson for me to see, because there was a reason why my grandmother put up with Mrs. Bobbin. You
Mm-hmm.
know, she put up with
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Bobbin because Mrs. Bobbin wasn't a bad person. She was a sad person. And the thing I talk about with scrying, and I talk about a lot in the water and with mirrors and different reflective surfaces, is that when we take the time, when we can watch somebody without them seeing us,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't feel somebody watching you through a mirror. You know, you can't
Right.
feel somebody watching
Right.
you through any reflective surface. But if somebody is staring at you in a room, you can feel them and you're going
Mm-hmm.
to act differently. But when we can observe somebody without them realizing we're observing them, we can actually more psychically or intuitively see the whole picture. We can get past the armor that they put on. We can get past the story of what maybe we thought they were. I still didn't
Mm-hmm.
like Mrs. Bob. It didn't change that. She was
Well,
really mean most of the time, but I didn't
mm-hmm.
dislike her as much. I actually, when she got huffy and stuff, I knew my grandmother wasn't going to listen to her and say we couldn't come over. And I also knew
Mm-hmm.
every time she said something like that, I just was thinking like, yeah, you're just sad.
Yeah. And it it is what it is, but what a great lesson to learn early in life. Now,
Yes.
you are also a geomancer. Tell us about that. That's the one thing I have not mastered
Okay. So
put it out there.
geomancy and dowsing are really
Mm-hmm.
similar. Geomancy
Mm-hmm.
is working with the earth's energy, and particularly with ley lines and use harnessing them. So
Mm-hmm.
when you think of things like stone circles, labyrinths, holy wells, most of them have pretty significant, and even like the buildings in our country, like most of our, particularly the United States, because we were founded by Freemasons, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our governmental buildings have geomancy worked into, which is the art of placement. So people think of geomancy, another way of thinking of it is feng shui. Feng
Mm-hmm.
shui is a form of geomancy. Dowsing is a form of geomancy. Geomancy is working with the earth's energy to heal the earth, as well as to heal places, and people who live in those places. A lot of times, so I started practicing geomancy when I trained in Druidry, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a natural component because I do get called sometimes for haunted houses,
Mm-hmm.
people experiencing spirit activity, and it's not always spirits. Sometimes a lot of the stuff that's going on, like my first questions are actually, is there somebody with a mental illness or a teenager living in the house? Because
Mm-hmm.
when people can't express themselves properly, sometimes things happen. Like they can make kinetic things happen, like things fall off the wall
Mm-hmm.
or disturbances. But another factor can be, what is going on in the house. And because I can do distant viewing, I can have appointments with people while I'm doing like a Zoom meeting and I'm talking to them, and I'll be like, okay, so you have a major ley line running into your house in the back left corner, and I believe it's a water line, and most likely you have clutter in that corner of your basement, maybe even some pooling water. Like those things, people can actually change them. They can make it
Mm-hmm.
so that the line is not moving through their house, that they can change, like if they're living in a place that has a really bad energetic flow, you can work with geomancy to change those things. But you can also use that, like I've done a lot of built a lot of earth temples on my property that harness the way that the ley lines come into the land.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a gardener. I've never gardened. 2 years
Uh-huh.
ago, my apprentices put in an herb garden, and my sister, who is a gardener, is blown away. She's like, I can't even believe how good this is, because I know that this land had never basically been fertilized for this. It never had any of this. And yet things are growing really crazily well. in 2 years.
Hmm.
And a lot of it, I think, is more because we have worked to harness the energy of my property so efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Um,
you do very, very, very good work. I want to jump again back to your website, salicrow.com. What events do you have coming up soon?
I am, well, my fall is actually filled with spirit communication. I'm doing a lot of different spirit galleries, but I also
Hmm.
have my last retreat, 2 retreats of the summer. This weekend, I'm teaching a tarot retreat. Tarot is the storyteller, which is the working pieces that I'm working out for the book that I'm writing right now.
Hmm.
I like to experiment before I actually send it off to the publisher. And the other one is I am doing an earth magic retreat at the Rootstock Retreat Center in Glover, Vermont. And then we are going to be building an earth temple. So that's all about geomancy. And
Mm,
that is in September. So those events are listed on my website.
okay. And talk to us about your School of Magic.
Okay. So Um, I started my School of Magic in the beginning of the pandemic as well. The pandemic, I had actually bought all of the video stuff that I needed.
Hmm.
Um, because that's the wonderful thing I think about being psychic, even when you don't know something's coming, you kind of do. So I had bought it all like
Yeah.
6 months before the pandemic.
Hmm.
And I I have a whole year-long course in elemental witchcraft that I made to accompany my book. So that
Hmm.
was the biggest reason for me doing the School of Magic. That has 12 different modules. People can learn at their own pace, but it's got a ridiculous amount of information. So if somebody really is looking to deep dive into witchcraft, that would be my suggestion because it is very thorough. But my favorite workshop that I have on there is empaths opening and protection. And it's a very, like maybe a
Mm.
couple hour workshop. And I
Hmm.
started with that because I have personally taught that workshop so many times. And every time I would teach it, I would then be doing readings for people and know that they too needed to take that workshop because I'm sure you've seen this as well, that we are, as a human species, going through psychic evolution. We are becoming more
Hmm.
empathic, and most people do not have the ability to um, handle what is happening for them emotionally.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
the School of Magic is a way because I have clients all over, for people to take classes with me when they can't do it in person. And sometimes I
Hmm.
do teach, like in the wintertime, I teach classes on Zoom. So there's that as well, which are live classes.
Okay. Well, Sally Crow, I've really enjoyed your time today. People, the book is The Path of Elemental Witchcraft, a Weird Woman's Book of Shadows. You can check her out at her website. That's salicrow.com. Sally, could you leave us with a pearl of wisdom? Because you have so much. Share a little.
Yeah, one of my big things that I like to share with people is the importance of vocabulary. And this has to do with developing psychically as well as healing. A lot of times people will get stuck. They enjoy the experience of having healing work done. And
Mhm.
even when they have healed, they're still using those words to describe themselves. And I try to tell people at some point you need to reevaluate yourself and change your language from healing to growing, because when we tell ourselves that we're constantly healing, we are also telling ourselves that we're broken.
Mhm.
The other bit that goes along with that is to take the words maybe, kind of, and think so out of our vocabulary when we are talking about experiences that we have that are psychic in nature or supernatural in nature, because that creates doubt. And people do it all the time. They'll like, I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye. And I'll be like,
Mhm.
no, could you say that without, could you change that? And they'll be like, I saw something out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
You can feel it when you say it in
Mhm.
the affirmative, and then
Mhm.
and then you get confirmation. And I'm always like, what are you talking about? You know whether you saw something out of the corner of your eye or not. You might not know what it is, but
Right.
you saw
Saw
something.
something.
So
Okay.
taking the word self-doubt words out of our vocabulary when we are developing psychically will help immensely in our ability to progress.
Okay, well, thank you very much. To my audience, I want to ask you to take a look at her website and to check out her book, get her book. It is a keeper. It is something that you will have on your shelf and refer back to many, many times. I've only had the book a few months and it's already dog-eared. Okay. And it's
Ooh, I
amazing
like that.
because you can read, you'll read something and you go right back to it, again and again and again. And she writes in a very easy, user-friendly, you don't have to have been a witch forever to understand what she's talking about, okay? Plain English, layman's terms. So please consider the Path of Elemental Witchcraft. Sally, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it as we collectively get
Thank you,
over
Monique.
it. You're welcome. And to the audience, I appreciate you too. And I really love the fact that you tune in and listen. And for everyone, please remember that the most important choice that you can make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of discovering the path of elemental witchcraft. Abundant blessings, light, and love to all. Agape.